seen. Like, share, and believe the little Nazarene.
Welcome back, everybody, to Culz Interviews. Today, we are interviewing a very special guest for our 30th episode. And if you've, hung around the channel long enough, you will know that Pastor Wayne was actually the very first person we interviewed ever. Even before Culz Interviews was a thing, we got to interview him. So we thought, who better to bring back for the 30th episode of Culz Interviews than Pastor Wayne Hanson. How are you doing today?
Doing good, Keegan. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's going very good, and we are actually in what's that place? It's a barbecue place in Sedalia.
Oh yeah, Beeman's.
Yeah, Beeman's Barbecue, and I saw your picture, and I was like, oh, I wanted to go, but we were actually up in Adams State that weekend.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good gig. It was late fall, so it was a very cold night, So
Yeah.
we cut the gig a little shorter than normal, but we had a pretty good turnout and it was awesome. It was a fun night. Love Beeman's, man. The food is so amazing.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we discovered them this year at some point. My mom did, and then we've been going pretty regularly.
Right.
So speaking of music, you actually have a new track debuting today.
Yep.
Do you want to tell us what that track is called?
Yeah, it's called The Little Nazarene. I've been a rock musician my whole life. I came up with a Christian band called Samaritan. My brothers and I traveled the Midwest, and we played music festivals and churches and cable access TV and youth camps and just like all the different places, youth groups and church, Sunday morning, Sunday evening service, all kinds of stuff like that. Had a pretty decent fan base back in Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, traveling and doing that kind of thing. And then I went to college and I toured with a band called One Accord full time for a couple of years, and then moved to Nashville and was a producer. And my weekends, I would lead worship with a church called Christ Church, and I started working with young people and leading worship and doing music with them. And that led into youth ministry and eventually pastoring and then church planting here in Castle Rock and Sedalia, And so it's been a wild adventure, but music has been a huge part of my life. And so I've always written songs, written music, more in the vein of back in the 80s, we called it new wave, which was like keyboard punk, sort of the precursor to techno, techno dance music started. So much of that kind of music ended up had its roots in disco, but the 80s new wave music was much more like synth rock, synthesizers and highly technical pieces, So my middle brother was a classically trained musician, so he could sight read Mozart and Bach and Beethoven. So we would do these intricate keyboard pieces, and then we'd have, as brothers, we'd have 3-part harmony on stuff. So we wrote a lot of interesting stuff. If you go to my iTunes page, you'll see my music, and then you'll see the band called Samaritan. And then I had a few other bands that I traveled and toured with that are on my stuff too. But this is the first song I've ever done. I've never written a Christmas song, and I've never released a techno song. I've never released like a dance genre song. And so it's very unique. I'm the little church I pastor in Sedalia is like a little A-frame chapel in the Pines. It's very country church. So we do bluegrass gospel. Right now I write for the Nashville Songwriters Association. So I pitch music to songwriters and record companies. And my flow is generally more Christian and country and bluegrass. But because I have this keyboardy techno interest, I also do some of that I don't know, EDM kind of style stuff. So I'm just goofing with Launch Key, and I found this really cool setup that I like, man, this would make a great Christmas track. So it almost sounds like it doesn't sound like anything I've released before. It sounds like kind of like video game music,
Okay.
with tight vocals, so a lot like what we used to do with Samaritan. Um, I don't know if you guys would look up this dance artist back in the 80s and 90s named Jane Child. It sounds a lot like Jane Child. It has that really kind of heavy, rock and roll sound with really keyboards kind of front and center, but a lot of a lot of like bells and whistles. Or maybe your generation probably would know more like Owl City, if you know Owl City.
Mhm.
That kind of techy, almost animatronic, dancey. I don't know. It's like a if the toys, if Santa's toy shop did a rock song, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. I don't know. I don't know, man. It's hard to describe your own music, but it just tells the story of Christmas from a modern perspective, acknowledging social media and all the technological changes since the first Christmas. And so you haven't heard the track yet, so
Yeah.
I'll play you the track, and you saw the album artwork probably.
Mhm.
That has me in sort of like a space suit with a little robot, so that's a little nod to the techno side for sure.
Yeah, so you're talking about like a Christmas song. As a writer of the music, what did you do to kind of get in that mindset? Like, what was kind of like your viewpoints, and how did you come up with these ideas and these tracks and these, sounds?
Yeah. What's interesting about music is I've written songs so many different ways. Sometimes I'll start with a lyric and I'll sing the lyric just a cappella without playing any chords or any instrument with it. And I'll try to come up with a melody that makes sense to me or that I think is singable. Certainly something that's in my range that I can sing. And then I'll develop a chord structure or I'll compose some kind of musical landscape behind it. Or in more the rock and roll sense, sometimes you find a groove or you find a beat with a riff that you repeat over and over again, and over the top of the riff you'll come up with some kind of hook that would be something you repeat throughout the song, like, oh, that could be a hit, or like, oh man, I could hear people singing along with that. This was totally different because I started with the groove first, because I had this sound pack on Launch Key, and this descending kind of jazz line. I was like, man, that'd make a great tight harmony if you had like a 4 or 5 part harmony descending on the line. It's kind of jazzy slash, I don't know, R&B, techno, and I've been singing tight harmonies my whole life, and so just coming up with each of those, finding each note on the descending chord lines was fun. And then there's so many Christmas songs. Like, that's the thing about Christmas. Like, once Halloween is over, they flip the Christmas switch, and it's like every Christmas, everything you could say about Christmas, hasn't it been said? Like, I mean, what else new could you say about Christmas? And I was like, well, what's developed in the last couple of years? What did they not have in the first nativity? Like, well, they didn't have TikTok, they
Right.
didn't have Instagram, right? They didn't have neon lights, they didn't have technology. So I worked technology into the lyric of the verses, and imagining the nativity unfolding as a story through the lights and sound of Christmas. Almost like if you were looking at Christmas at nativity through a toy shop window with high technology inside there, and people were Instagramming and TikToking what they saw. That's the landscape of sound I was trying to create. And then I wrote lyrics around the nativity with these nods to technology throughout the song. So it's a trippy song. At first, I would listen to it and I go, I don't know if I like it. Like, do I like this song? I think I like it. Like, it does. It's not it's not like most music I do. And yet the more I listen to it, kind of the more it grows on me. Like, oh yeah, this is fun, man. It's good driving music. And of course, I've been riding motorcycle now the last couple of years, so I like having stuff that kind of tumbles along and sort of has a groove that just rolls and rolls and rolls, that's good driving music. And techno is really good driving. It's good snowboarding music. It's good skiing music. Anything that has a flow to it. And this song definitely has a flow. So that's kind of, the more I listen to it, the more it grows on me, the more I'm like, I kind of get into the groove of it. So it's a funny song. And I actually have an animator working on a piece animating a cartoon Holy Family, and the baby Jesus going 1, 2, 3, 4, because there's this little voice throughout the track that keeps going 1, 2, 3, 4, and so baby Jesus is holding up his fingers going 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a goofy Christmas song, but I like it. It's just a dance track, and it'd be great. Gingerbread music, I make gingerbread, so anything that's just kind of fun to cook to and dance around the house with, that's the kind of song it is.
Yeah, no, I saw a picture of a gingerbread that you were making today. It's turning
Yeah.
out really good. Do you want to tell some of the viewers? Because I know every year you do a different
Yeah.
kind of design.
I'm on like my 9th year of doing these intricate gingerbread displays. So I'll pick a theme, So I've done like some of the highlights of ones I've done in the past is I did a gingerbread Death Star from Star Wars. It was like the size of a basketball. I did the Kremlin, like the old Russian Kremlin. I did St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna with the tile roofs, all the intricate tiles. I did the Sydney Opera House with the curves and, like the shell shapes. That was crazy. This year I did, and I did a gingerbread motorcycle last year, but there was so much of it that was kind of skeletal that had to be framed up with wood. And then the cookie was basically frosting on top of the bike. This year I gave myself a challenge, and I'm like, I don't want any infrastructure. I want the entire thing to be completely edible. Like I want all of it to be gingerbread or candy or fondant or something we can eat. So there's no structure inside of it. So that's a challenge actually, because cookie just crumbles. You know what I mean? It just, it has to be the right consistency if it's going to be rigid and stand up and all that. So I made a Viking ship, and the theme of this year's gingerbread display is the Viking raid of York in 867, which was when the Danes and Swedes and Norwegians invaded England for the first time. And my wife is Danish, I'm Swedish, and we're just celebrating Viking heritage. We have the little gingerbread men fighting each other with peppermint swords, and it's just fun, and it becomes a conversation piece. Then at New Year's Eve, I blow it up with fireworks. That's how I always I send it out with a bang. I don't hold on to it. We have some singed gingerbread with coffee, and we throw it away and start all over next year. So that's the thing, that we do with gingerbread. And so a lot of nieces and nephews and little kids around the house. It's just a fun thing to celebrate.
Yeah, no, I've seen the pictures, and I will say you have a lot more patience than I do.
Well, I've had a lot of failure. Things do fall apart or fail. One of my favorite things to see when people make gingerbread is if it fails or collapses, just put a toy dinosaur in front of it, so it looks like the dinosaur ate it, or it destroyed itself or whatever.
Right, a little Jurassic Park going on there.
Exactly. Yeah. The main thing is to have fun, right? The holiday is just it's a time for family and for joy, for generosity, time for giving, kindness, all those things.
We try to promote different charities and stuff. We've done like Same You. It's one about brain, but I've seen you raising money at different places. Do you want to talk about some of that and how people
Sure.
could help at this time of giving?
Yeah. Of course, I'm the pastor of Summit Church of Douglas County. We're a great little church that we do a motorcycle ministry at the church because we have weekly services. We do the Alpha course, which is sort of if people have questions about God, but they don't want to come to church, we do it on another night of the week. We share a meal, and then we just answer people's biggest, toughest questions about God. Because oftentimes people have honest questions that if they could feel were at least addressed or heard, they might be able to open up a relationship with God. So we try to just make faith very approachable. And so that's what we do with church. My wife and I also support the Help and Hope Center here in Castle Rock. So big food bank here supported by the local churches. So they have a thrift store. They do a back to work program. They help people find jobs. They help people who are homeless. They have a hotel here in town that people get vouchers for several nights. So if they break down on the freeway, or they get kicked out and they're in an emergency situation here in Castle Rock, you don't have to sleep on the street. There's a place where you can go, and then we can either direct you to a women's shelter or get you more long-term care at other facilities or whatever. But we really believe that the gospel has to have action, right? It can't just be words. People have to feel the love of God. And I think it was Mother Teresa who said that people can't hear the gospel until their stomachs are full, right? If your stomach's empty, it's hard to listen to any preaching, or hard to, hear any truth, because you're just trying to survive. And so we try to provide some of those basic things. And then in addition to that, just raise up a really loving and healthy church too.
Yeah, no, and I can say from personal experience that your guys' church is really good. We had, and I know you know the story, but for viewers that don't know, we had a bad experience at another church. And so for us, it was kind of hard to find something. And then I think one of my mom's friends actually relied the word of your guys' church, and we came to you guys when you were in Castleview High School. And yeah, I love it. I love the music, and you guys are always just having fun and accepting everybody. And I really enjoy that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
cool.
and music's definitely a big part, though. I mean, what about music do you think helps people connect to like the Gospels and the teachings of, Christ and everything?
Yeah, there's a lot of science behind that, actually. There've been recent studies in the last 10 years where people have studied what happens to you physiologically when you start singing in groups. You'll experience this if you go to a concert, but you can really experience it when you go to church too. When people start singing together in groups, their breathing starts to match, their heartbeat, their heart rate starts to match. Even their brain waves, their brain activity starts to come into alignment and into synchronicity. I think there's something deeply spiritual about singing in groups of people. And I think that that somehow when we sing and express gratitude to God, even if things aren't going well, maybe even especially when things aren't going well, we feel the collective care of the people around us, and it opens our hearts and probably even takes down the defenses that we have in our minds to maybe hear some of the things that the word has to say, or that the Bible might say to us, or things that the Holy Spirit may be trying to deposit in our spirits that we would normally be resistant to. You know what I mean? But after we sing, we get tender. We start realizing, oh yeah, this is not about me. Like when I'm singing in a large group of people, I think about, look at all these people. We're all here together. Like we're all singing together. Wow, I love these people. I think these people love me. And man, what are we here for? And like suddenly we have this collective revelation that we're all here for a bigger purpose. And you can get that in a rock concert for sure. But I think the highest purpose for music is for the glory of God, to connect with God. And I do a lot of, this is the very desk in the morning where I do a lot of meditation. So I'll read my scripture for the morning, and then I'll light a candle, and I'll set a timer for 7 minutes, and then I'll just sit with the Holy Spirit in total silence. And if the Lord wants to speak to me about what I read that day, that's great. If he wants to correct me and say, hey, Wayne, that thing you said to that person, you should go say you're sorry for that. Or, hey, you know what? You need to go help that person that you haven't seen in a while. They're hurting. You should go call them. I get little guidance from the Lord when I spend time every day, just a few minutes every day with the Lord. And that meditation is so powerful. And I'm so auditory anyway, musically. I have to turn off all distractions. So I'll listen to instrumental music that doesn't have words, because if it has words, then I start thinking about the words. And I start thinking about the song. I think about the story. I'm thinking about the artist. But if it's just instrumental music, then I feel like my thoughts can be directed by the Lord, or I can just sit in the silence and not be influenced one way or the other. It's very helpful. There's a a hand drum group out there that I love to listen to lately, and I'm not even sure where these guys are from. Have you ever seen Hand Pants? They're like these.
Uh-uh.
They're like steel drums, but you play them with your hands, like congas or bongos.
Okay.
The band is called Hang Massive, and so they do these beat loops and technical drum loops while they play handpan, and it's just like it rings like a bell, you know what I mean? And there's something in that when I'm meditating and listening to that kind of music that just kind of clears out the noise, and it just clears my thoughts and even just quiets my spirit a little bit, and I just can calm down and find more peace. And then I'm not as freaked out. I get a lot of us musicians are very high strung when it comes to our emotions and passions. So I need little techniques here and there to calm myself down, and just think clearly about my life and the day and all the things I want to do. So
Yeah, we've talked to some musicians before, and I remember one. His name's Nick. He was telling us, "Yeah, I sing something positive in the morning,
yeah,
and it just helps so much. Like he just, it's helped him accomplish all these things, and yeah, it's amazing what just trying to have that positive outlook. And right now, it's hard. We're going through kind of a rough patch, and
yep.
you know, I
There's
think anything little can help.
something about those vibrations too. I think
Mhm.
when you can feel your own voice vibrating, you can hear people around you singing, or you hear the speakers vibrating. Is if it's not dissonant, but it's very a pleasing sound. It does again. It goes back to the science. Endorphins get released. Even sometimes dopamine gets released. So your pleasure centers get activated. So music can be so beneficial, especially for certain people who have that gene or whatever. There's a great TED talk out there right now about these healing frequencies, like the 528 healing frequency, where they're doing studies on cancer patients where they do directed frequencies over tumors and cancers, and oftentimes these cancer cells get blown apart by these high frequencies that bring the DNA or these cells into alignment. And it's wild, man, that maybe some of that's why music has been so healing. It's crazy to
It's
think
like
about.
it's wired in our DNA.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And I believe that God spoke the world into existence, right? Genesis 1:1, God said, let there be light, right? So something in how he said or what he said or the word coming out create a creative activation that caused things to come into existence. So I don't know, man. It's deep stuff for sure.
Yeah, no, I've there's a what is it, the golden ratio, where
Yeah,
everything in the universe is kind of like by
that's right.
this ratio.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, there I found
Yeah,
it some
Fibonacci
movie.
sequence, right? The Fibonacci.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There's something to that for sure.
right. And they've done like studies, and like anything we kind of find like beautiful
Yeah.
follows that ratio.
Have you ever eaten any of that Fibonacci broccoli?
Uh-uh.
They have it at Whole Foods, but they've got a broccoli that I don't know if it's like they found it in nature or they've genetically modified it, but it makes a perfect Fibonacci spiral in the broccoli. And it's great. It tastes like great broccoli.
Right. I'll have to pick some up.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got to be good for you, right?
Right. Right. Anything can be good, anything can be bad. That is for sure.
It's true.
Uh, so like one thing I like to do is, and this has been since like one time my dad, I was going through some stuff. He's like, just open the Bible. Whatever you need to hear, it'll open to. So I
Yeah.
like just randomly opening and seeing what verse and what it's saying. And
Mhm.
it is weird how much like sometimes you're like, I needed to hear that.
Yeah. I do the 1 year Bible,
Mhm.
which I like about it is it shows the day's date, and then it gives 4 passages. So you get a Old Testament, New Testament, a Psalm, and a proverb. And if you'll read the Bible 15 minutes a day, every day for a year, you'll get through the whole Bible in 1 year. And then and I have this certain second edition so I'll just read you today, right? So this particular edition of the Bible there every day there's a highlighted verse. See how that one's darker than the
Mhm.
rest? So each day of the calendar has a highlighted verse. So if I can't read the whole 15 minutes, I'll at least read what the highlighted verse is. And today's highlighted verse for December 14th in the One Year Bible is Revelation chapter 5, verse 12. And this is about the angels in heaven at the end of days when Christ is coming into his reward. It says, and they sang in a mighty chorus, worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. And that's it. That's just the reading for that day. And I go, okay, yeah, praise God, praise God. You know, there's always going to be a nugget somewhere in the Bible that if I'll read it and go, okay, I'm gonna think about that one. I'm gonna pray about that. How can I apply that to my life? You know, God speaks to me through his word all the time.
Yeah,
Good.
it's kind of like those like synchronicities. We'll just get it every once in a while. And it's like, okay, so obviously I'm supposed to do that, you know.
Right? Yeah, that's awesome. I think that definitely even when you asked about, you know, being on your podcast or your show, and I'm like, well, I do have that song, you know, and
Mhm.
I'm not, it's not on a label. I'm not, you know, I don't have merch to sell. I'm not trying to move CDs off a shelf or anything, but you know, this song, this Christmas song, I look at it like a Christmas gift that I just give to the world. Like, hey, I wrote a Christmas song. You might like it. Here you go. It's called the Little Nazarene, you know, and it didn't cost me anything to make, and it doesn't cost you anything to listen to it, you know, and it
Right.
maybe it'll bring some joy to your life, you know, and I think that's just another way to give, just like a smile or a kind word or a compliment or letting someone cut in front of you, you know, on the freeway, you know, to get to the exit, or, you know, paying for somebody's gas or groceries or whatever, you know. If you have the ability to be kind, you probably ought to take it, you know. You probably ought to do it. And it probably does more for you than it does for that person. Almost always, right? So, you know, I'm sure you make this podcast because not only is it good for you and it keeps your mind active and you're connecting with people on subjects that you find interesting, but you're helping someone who's listening on their phone, or they've you know connected with you in some kind of way and they feel less lonely because Deacon's on here, you know, connecting with them on things they're interested in, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally. Yeah, we've done we do a whole like book review series,
cool.
usually about whatever we're talking about in videos and stuff, but I've had people like comment and say, "Hey, I wasn't sure I was going to buy the book, but now that I've listened to your review, I'm going to buy it." And I was like, "Okay, I made a difference there."
Right, that's right.
Or like we did one on Columbine
Oh wow.
and told that story, and somebody commented it and just how much it meant to them, and they were a family member. And I was
Wow.
like, "Wow, that means so much to me," you know. And so yeah, that's what it's about. I love just finding out new stuff and sharing it with people, you know.
For sure. Yeah. The active discovery shouldn't be done alone, right? You know, I think science's discoveries don't mean much unless they're shared, right? Experiences don't mean much unless they're shared. And so that's, you know, why we have a shared experience, like church or a podcast or a recovery meeting or, you know, connecting with someone who has a need. You know, it's when we share experiences that we can make a difference in other people's lives, you know. And we might not have all, you know, we may think, oh, well, I'm not rich, I can't give anything, or you know, who am I'm nobody. No, everybody can give something. Everybody can be a kind person to someone else, you know. And and everybody is good for something, even if it's just a bad example, right? Like,
Right.
oh, don't be like that guy, you know. He's having a bad day. I'm not going to be like that guy, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that is for sure. You know, we there was once, I forget where I heard it from, but they were like, everyone's lived, or humanity's been around all these years, but for some reason we're all here at this very small time
That's right.
together. So we might as well help each other out.
That's right. And God probably put us here at the same time for a purpose, right? For some reason, he thought this particular mix of people would be important to have together at this time in history. Yeah. Yeah. I think that we're doing much better than we were, what, 2 years ago. The pandemic, man, that was a test of all tests, I think, in a lot of ways. And to come out on the other side now is so much better. And I hope that there's some justice, because it certainly seems there were a lot of lies that happened during that time, and a lot of people were unnecessarily hurt and taken advantage of. And you got to believe that God sees all that too, and then he's gonna square those crooked lines and get things, back to where they were, the way they're supposed to be. Certainly see a lot of corruption in our government, both local and national, and the entertainment system has gotten so screwed up. Hollywood is so screwed up. It's like, yeah, even the music business, because I'm a songwriter, I have a lot of people approach me about, hey, I think I got an idea for a song, or hey, I have a song, I want to pitch it to this artist. I'm like, that's great, but just know that even if the song hits, you're not going to make the money you used to make when we had hits before, because artists are making fractions of pennies on the dollar that they used to make. I say, maybe the story of the old Delta blues musicians like Robert Johnson and all these people like John Lee Hooker and those guys. They would get paid $300 to record a record, and that was all they got. And then they would take those records and put them on the jukeboxes, and they would just go on tour to on the Chitlin circuit, and they would just play these seedy joints doing their blues music, and they get famous from the radio and the jukeboxes, and they would just get paid by how much beer they sold that night. They get a percentage of the door or the sales or whatever. But we used to like complain that those Delta musicians got so screwed over. But you know what? Today's musicians are screwed over more, because they're not getting paid $300 for a song one time. They make nothing, like absolutely nothing. And some of the most talented musicians, some of those talented songwriters, and you go, that's unjust. That's not right either,
Yeah, where the record labels and everyone are making all the money now, and it's
well, I don't even think the labels are. I think it's the streaming services. I think it all goes to Spotify. I think it all goes to iTunes. I think it all goes to the big tech. I think they've just screwed over the entire music industry. So some of some of those holdouts of bands, remember AC/DC for the longest time would not put any of their music on digital. They were the last big hard rock band headliner to finally go on iTunes. And what did that happen, like 4 years ago? And they've been out since the 70s, so they knew that as soon as they sold the rights to that was the end. That's the only money they're going to get was from concert ticket sales and from merch, and that's still true to now. These young artists like your age and younger that are coming out, they do these 360 deals, and the record company gets a piece of everything now. They don't just get a piece of their music sales. They get a piece of merch. They get a piece of concert sales. They get a piece of everything, and in perpetuity. So you don't even own your stuff, once it comes out off the label. Like, they own it forever.
yeah.
And so that's just wrong. It's completely wrong, and it's got to change. Just has to change. So there probably has to be a new format for music that will somehow defeat the old format. I don't know what it's going to be, but God, show us the way, right?
It's funny you brought up AC/DC. Last week we actually talked to Lady Susan Massino, who wrote the book on AC/DC, and she actually was one of the first people to write about them.
Oh, cool.
Like, she was like, who am I writing about? And they're like, oh, some band named AC/DC, and was just playing in Wisconsin, I think, in a little bar. And I was like, that is so weird to think of AC/DC in a little bar in Wisconsin.
They'd go wherever they could to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I had a friend in Grand Junction that saw the Police before they signed, and they played at the Hilton Hotel Bar Restaurant. They pulled up to the Hilton with the little black van and a trailer, and they played the lounge at the Hilton. Nobody knew who the Police were. And of course, they brought the house down. And so it's like, you never know. And there are unknowns right now that they could easily be the next Taylor Swift. You just don't know. The main thing in life is to be kind, and people coming up, people going down. Not everyone's going to be a superstar. The main thing is, and I don't think even you want it. Like having been a music producer myself in Nashville and seen the other side and been to those people's houses and sat in on recording sessions, man, there's so many alcoholics and divorced people and people sleeping around on each other and just sad, drug addicted, angry, screwed over financially. I, I was friends with a guy from a really well-known Texas country rock band. I won't say the name because just in case. They got screwed over by a manager basically who took all of their money and spent it on cocaine, and then they had them in debt for a 5-album deal with their record company, and they basically were like $1.2 million in debt because this guy was a drug addict. And there was no way there's no getting out of the contract. They'd signed the record contract and they were in debt.
Yeah.
You're screwed. What are you going to do? You can't even declare bankruptcy because the contract supersedes all that. You're stuck being a country rock musician the rest of your life, whether you want to be one or not.
No, I can definitely kind of talk to that because me and my brother were on, well, 2 other people filmed, but we were on Travel Channel talking a little bit Colorado history.
Oh, cool.
And they ended up only using me and my brother. They didn't use 2 other people, and then they like twisted our story and kind of made their own story using clippets. And I was like, I'm fine with YouTube. I can talk about what I want and do what I want,
Right?
And it's not always greener on the other side,
No, and did you get money up front? Did you get any money in perpetuity, or is it all?
Yeah, they just gave us money up front.
Yep. That's the business.
Right.
That's the business. It's so shady, man. It's so shady.
Yeah. Now I'm just on YouTube and I'm like, I love it. I can talk with people and I can do whatever I want. Speaking of YouTube, I was listening to one of your series, Jesus Taxi.
Oh, yeah.
Today. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? Because I thought it was really fun to listen to.
Yeah, it's a fun show. Which episode? Do you know which episode you watched?
Let me get my phone. I had it up and then I knocked it off when I was talking.
I did a comedian.
It was one when you were in, I think, Tennessee, I want to say.
Oh, cool.
Let's see. Let me go to my history.
Was it Rick Roberts, maybe? The guy who played Barney Fife in the Mayberry movie?
Oh, Joe. His episode 22 with Joe Battaglia.
Battaglia, yeah. He's an author, yeah. So Jesus Taxi is a pretty interesting show. It started during the pandemic, because they basically shut down churches. We could only do online church, and of course, Castleview High School, where we were doing church, canceled all rental contracts. So for a while, we didn't even have a church building. So the offerings were pretty poor, pretty low, right? Everyone was scared. So I started driving Lyft and Uber just for finances. And I would do these late night conversations with people, and it's amazing. People will say things to their Uber driver they won't say to anybody else. It's kind of like your hairdresser. You tell all your secrets to your Uber driver because who's he going to tell? You know what I mean? Right. So that's some of the craziest conversations with people. Like, man, we need to tape some of these. And so I started getting permission from people, and then started just going, I could do a conversation with this, just with people, with guests, So we drive around and in the Jesus Taxi and talk about their interests or their new book that's coming out, or, so their faith experience, people that aren't Christians in the taxi. And every time we talk about, their interest or what's happening in their life, and then we'll always end up talking about Jesus or the gospel at the end. And that's kind of the format of the show, and it's made for Christian TV, so we can syndicate it to Christian TV stations. It's 28:30, that broadcast length. But I'm not trying to do that for like a financial reason. I just want it to be a blessing again, just to be out there for people. So it's I'll probably film more. Because I don't ride motorcycle in the wintertime, and late winter into spring in Colorado, it's always sketchy. So that's when I kind of like to drive rideshare car and, have little projects on the side. And I did a bunch of filming in Arkansas last spring, went down to Albuquerque and Texas. I did a show in Dallas, just traveling around different cities doing the Jesus Taxi. So it's a fun little show. It is a fun little show. I think I'm up to like 25 episodes or something now too. So it's going good.
Yeah.
They have multiple cameras in the car, and just it's almost like Cash Cab meets Dash Cab Confessional or something. I don't know. It's it's just a fun little show. You
Yeah,
should watch.
no, I enjoyed it.
You watch the Tennessee one. You should watch the other one in Tennessee I did with Rick Roberts.
Okay.
He's a stand-up comedian that used to do warm-ups for all the Opryland shows in Nashville. And there's a Mayberry movie on Amazon Prime right now, and he played the Barney Fife character in the new Mayberry movie. And
Okay.
he does a dead-on impression of Barney Fife. It's amazing. It's really, really good.
Yeah, no, I'll check it out. I definitely recommend it. So anyone listening, go check it out. I thought it was really fun to listen to.
Yeah, if you search The Jesus Taxi Show, that's how it'll come up on YouTube. It's the easiest way to find it. Yeah.
Yeah, I recommend it. You said you went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, right?
Yeah, yep.
How
So
did you like that?
Albuquerque's a rough town, man. Of course,
Okay.
Walter White, Breaking Bad, all of that. I support a ministry there called Faith Comes by Hearing. And so they do audio Bible translation, and they make these solar Bibles. So, because 80% of the third world people can't read. So to give them a Bible doesn't do them any good because they can't read it. So what Faith Comes by Hearing does is they make audio Bibles in the language of the people of that country, and they make solar audio Bibles. So it has a little solar panel on it, and then it's preloaded with an MP3 with the entire Bible in their language. So they do listening groups with the Bible with people. So they'll start little churches and little villages wherever they are, and they've got it in like, I don't know, 60 languages right now. It's crazy. So we've done it. We've taken them to, Spanish speaking countries, taken to the Navajo reservation, have taken them to the Philippines, take these audio Bibles to people in backwaters that, a paper Bible wouldn't do them any good because they can't read. So I love that ministry. And so that's what I filmed in Albuquerque, and some really cool people there. That's a good episode for sure. Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. We had an experience there because we go down to New Mexico yearly at
Yeah.
this point. We're friends with a lot of authors about Billy the Kid and stuff. So we go hang out down there and
Yeah.
all those sites. But yeah, we went to the Whataburger.
County. What is that?
Lincoln.
Lincoln, right? Lincoln, New Mexico. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. There's a great little brewery, and they have the best green chili cheeseburgers in the state.
Oh
there.
yeah, man. Yeah, their food in New Mexico can't be beat. So good.
Right. Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. So we did that, and we went to this Whataburger, and I think what was this 2020, and so we got out because we just wanted a pico de gallo Whataburger, right?
Right.
And there's a guy, like an armed guard, who's like, "Get back in your car." I was like, "I don't want the hamburger that bad."
Yeah, and the chain down there is Blake's Lotta Burger, right? That's the other thing. Yeah, they got the Texas Whataburgers and the Lotta Burgers.
Yeah. We tried Blake's when we were in Roswell, because Roswell is actually a pretty big town. I didn't think it was gonna be that big.
To be now, especially right with all the tourism. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. You have some books out as well about Tilly the Tilapia.
Yeah, I've got a series of children's books. So Tilly the Tilapia, which is it's a story about the beautiful man, it's basically tells the Bible stories of the feeding of the 5,000 and the miracle catch from the fish's perspective. And that's just a fun way to kind of introduce the person of Jesus to little kids. And then I have one called Tilly Breaks Through, which is kind of a story about recovery. How sometimes we get trapped, and how do you get out of your trap, and how can you help other people that might be trapped? And so it's a story about overcoming difficulty. And then I have one called Tilly Pays the Taxes, which is the story of where remember Jesus and Peter were approached by the taxing authorities to pay their taxes, and they didn't have any money. They're broke. So Jesus says to Peter, throw a line in the water, And the first fish you catch will have a coin in its mouth, and with that coin you go pay our taxes. It's a crazy story. It's only in one of the gospels. And but I just had Tilly be that fish. And so the fish has the coin in the mouth, and Peter and Jesus pay the taxes. So it's about, that one's just about miracle provision, that sometimes money runs out and you're like, I don't know how God's going to provide, but sometimes God provides in miraculous ways that you're like, man, I didn't know that was going to happen, or I didn't know he's going to provide that way, and just always be trusting that God can provide, that he will provide. That's what that.
Right.
So I'm working on a new one, a Jonah story, or
Okay.
the whale,
Mhm.
That one's going to be called Tilly and the Great Fish, and
Okay.
so it'll tell the whole story of the man who was running away from God.
No, I saw those and I was like, oh, that is so cool. Just such a good idea. I like it. Definitely a new perspective. I'm always, because like you said, there's so many things done, but how can you bring it to a new audience, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I feel like that's what you're doing there, is helping new people kind of get into
Yeah.
the stories and stuff.
What's interesting is that Tilly book is selling really well in Sweden and Norway. And I think it's because of my last name, Hanson. It's a very, very Scandinavian name. And of course, Norwegian and Swedish people want their kids to learn English. So they're buying the book and taking it home to teach their children English. And that's why the book is selling so much in Sweden. So it's fun.
Oh, that's great. We recently did an interview with a gentleman. He was it was all about Jesus. And the big takeaway was just like Jesus walked a lot. Like there was a
Yeah.
lot of walking.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was like, that was a feat in itself. And I was like, yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Been to Israel a couple times. If you ever get a chance to go, you should try to take that chance, save up the money or whatever and try to go. But once all this military conflict is over, of course. But the one on one of my trips to Israel, I went to a kibbutz, which is basically a collective farm in Israel. And they showed all the traditional methods that shepherds and farmers would use on a traditional settlement, where they made goat cheese, they made flatbread, you milked a goat, they made hummus, they picked vegetables, you got to hold a lamb on your shoulder, they had flocks of sheep and goats and all that stuff, and you took a donkey ride. And so we were near Nazareth, and they're like, just imagine, Joseph and Mary took a donkey, and it's an 8-day journey from here to Jerusalem. Like, oh, so a pregnant lady was on the donkey like this, riding for 8 days straight, right? You go, yeah, wow. It brings, like, it's not some like little 20-minute around the corner, it was a real ordeal for them to go from Nazareth to Bethlehem to pay their taxes and for her to have that baby, so the
Well,
hardship, don't imagine, until you see it, you're like, wow.
right. Well, and that time perfectly with what time of year it is. It's obviously Christmas time, which
Right.
celebrates, the birth of Jesus. So do you want to talk about that and, kind of what that
Yeah.
ordeal was and what, because Mary and all of them, where they were and the conditions and kind of like the political
Right.
aura and everything that was going on?
Yeah. In some ways, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Right. Because the Jewish people in Palestine, because that's what the Romans called it, they called it Palestine as an insult, because it used to belong to the Philistines, right? The very enemies of the Jews, which the Philistines actually were wiped out by the Amorites and Hittites, I believe. Um, and all of this conflict with quote unquote Palestinians is a misnomer these days, because those are actually just Arabic people that had settled in the land or came later to agitate the Jewish problem in Israel. But you know, our political differences and difficulties in this world are not that different from the time when Jesus was born. The Roman occupation of Israel was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. People could be conscripted into slavery just at will. You would have to carry a Roman officer's bag a mile if he told you to, and you might have to follow him and drop your regular living and become a slave just because he said so. There was, it was a very awful and difficult time, and slavery was not just a racial problem; it was a worldwide problem amongst governments and people groups and nation states, and it was a very scary time. And now is a scary time, right? So we think that we're like the only people to experience hardship, but life has always been hard for people. And I think that God gave us Christ, he gave us the Lord Jesus as hope for the world, that the world wouldn't always have to be like that. That Jesus came as a light in the darkness, that we could find a better way to live. And for me, you compare all the world religions, you can compare Christianity with Islam and with Buddhism and with agnosticism or paganism or the nature religions, and I'll take the love of Jesus every time. I really will. And just put aside all the denominations and the church government and the politics, and just let's look at the founders of those religions and say, who would you most wish to follow? For me, it's Jesus, because Jesus he's light, he's love, he's joy, he's abundance. It's just, there's love your enemies, forgive people, go the extra mile, all the things that we know we don't necessarily want to do. Where many of those other religions, it's about revenge, or it's about anger, or it's about getting it over on other people, or my race is better than your race, or whatever. And then paganism isn't much better. I talked about the Viking display. My ancestry, the Vikings were awful. They had human sacrifice that you didn't, they would, before a harvest, they would find a virgin, or they'd find a warrior that would be willing to lay his life down to shed his blood on an altar so that their blood would cause a good harvest. I mean, how sad. How sad. And of course, people shedding their blood had nothing to do with how the harvest would come in. And they're giving their lives to a carved image of Odin or Thor or Freya. And you go, these are dead idols. They're carved out of wood. They can't hear you. They can't help you. They're not, you did all that for nothing. And we have people today chasing empty gods, very similar. They think that fame is going to do it, or they think like enough likes on social media, or enough follows, or enough streams, or somehow when I get this, then I'll be happy. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because you'll get that and it won't be enough. You'll be happy for 5 minutes and then you'll want something else. And that's, to me, that's where satisfaction in a life in God, finding your identity in God, finding your contentment in the Holy Spirit, then I can stop the pursuing. I can finally just be my Father's child. I can just be one of God's kids, and rest. And I don't have to accomplish anything. I don't have to prove to God that I deserve his love. I just rest in his love, And that is the message. That is the message of Christmas, right? God so loved the world that he gave Jesus, right? And I think that's why it's also the most hopeful time of year. That somehow people know there's something special about Christmas. Like, wow, people are really nice. They're really generous. The lights are so pretty. What's going on? Something's different, right? Something's different. Yeah, something is different.
Well, and from such humble beginnings, whether it was like an actual manger as we think, or a cave.
Right.
I mean, he was born in like nowhere.
Right.
And just like not very good conditions. Like, I don't know if like ladies today want to be going to a cave or a manger to have a baby,
Yeah. Well, she didn't have a choice, right?
Right. Yeah, because the inn was full.
That's right. And women sometimes these days, you can have your baby in the back of a police car. You can have your baby sitting in the park. I mean, it happens, you know. And when the baby's coming, the baby's coming.
Yeah, like my buddy, he's Navajo, but he said he was almost born in a Chevelle, so he's always loved Chevelle. So
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, speaking of Christmas, is there any movies that you like to watch every Christmas that kind of get you in that spirit?
Definitely. You know, I've been kind of compiling a list of it now because I'm like, man, there's some great movies with underlying Christian themes that I really love. The Disney's version of A Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey playing Scrooge. That is a fantastic film. It's basically Charles Dickens word for word for word for word. And of course, Charles Dickens has so much scripture interwoven into the dialogue about, you know, peace on earth, goodwill toward men, what it's really all about, generosity, giving, caring for the poor, all that stuff. And you know, there's a lot of Bible in that movie, you know, because it's the very words of Charles Dickens. So of course it's gonna be good. And the special effects is great. And Jim Carrey's portrayal of each of the ghosts of the Christmas past, ghost present, and ghosts of the Christmas future, it's just fantastic. The other one that I love, and we just watched it last night, was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the
Oh,
Narnia.
Narnia. Yeah.
Man, again, similar. You know, C.S. Lewis was a Cambridge atheist that became a Christian, and so he began writing fantasy stories with Christian overtones. And so, if you watch The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, of course, Aslan is the Christ figure, right? And the White Witch of Winter is the devil. It's this kingdom of darkness, you know. And these four children, you know, Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Edmund, they represent all of humanity, you know, and the temptations. And then Edmund, of course, he gets tempted by the Turkish delight, you know, and that's like a metaphor for alcoholism or drugs, you know, and she keeps on giving him just a little more Turkish delight, keeps reeling him in more and more till he's betraying everybody, you know, and then he's enslaved by his addiction or by his, you know, his he just loses his mind for the sweets and betrays everybody. And then in the end, Aslan gives his life for Edmund on the stone table. And you go, that's the gospel. That's Jesus dying on a cross for the sinful people, right? You go, oh yeah, it's all over. And it's a Christmas movie because in the middle of the movie, Father Christmas shows up, right? And it's the winter is Narnia has been in winter for 100 years without a Christmas. And then the snow starting to melt, Father Christmas comes, and Father Christmas says, Aslan is on the move, right? And he gives the weapons to the children, and he says, you're gonna fight this battle, you know, and you're gonna set Narnia free from its enslavement, you know. And you go, what a metaphor for the spiritual life, you know. I love that. Of course, I love all the traditional ones too. I love It's a Wonderful Life, the old Jimmy Stewart movie. That I've always watched that one, and I like the colorized version of it. You know, I love Bill Murray's Scrooged. That's a great one. You know, he's a TV network producer making a Christmas special, and then he has, you know, his dynamic, very typical, you know, Charles Dickens from with a modern twist, and his confession straight into the camera at the end of the movie where he's, I get it now. I get it now. He's like, this is about giving, you know, and then he's losing it emotionally, you know, and he brings his wife on the screen, and it's like, you know, that's Bill Murray at his height, you know. Buddy the Elf, Will Ferrell, you know, that's just funny, good Americana Christmas movies. You know, the innocence of all that it's so good. Um,
I
yeah,
love their homage to the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot film in that one. Where he's
It-
just walking through the park and they're like,
an
they
elf.
capture him. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my
That's right.
favorite part. Me and my daughter watched it, and
Forgot
she's
about
like, "Dad, it's your part."
that. That's right. And the snowball fight, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're just like, "Choo, choo, choo."
yeah. Yeah, there's so many. We talk about writing a new Christmas song. It's the same thing. Like, what else? What other Christmas movie could you make that hasn't been made? So trying to find a fresh perspective on all that's can be very challenging for creative people. But society's always changing too.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely see that in film and music. It's always changing with the times, and there's things that come in for a little bit and go away. And for film, in talking about Jesus, is there a portrayal that you like a lot, or is there some that maybe you dislike?
I really love the Passion of the Christ, man. I think Mel Gibson really nailed it with that film. You know, the fact that they recorded the whole thing in Aramaic, so it's as true to the original language of what Jesus most likely said and how he said it. Man, there's something really powerful about that. That Jim Caviezel performance on the Passion of the Christ was really something. Um, there have been a lot of bad Christian movies too, man. Just cheesy, under budget, not well done, bad theology. A lot of people love The Chosen, and I always caution people with The Chosen. You know, I say I love that it's done well. The budget is really good. The production values are really good. They're very faithful to what first century Israel probably looked like at the time. What I caution Christians and new believers with about The Chosen is don't watch The Chosen and think you're reading your Bible, because you're not. there's a lot of things in The Chosen that are speculation about what might have happened between verses or between chapters, or they're speculating about relationships or what may be or what could have been. Um, I think if you ought to read the Bible for yourself, and so watching The Chosen is good as just entertainment, but I wouldn't substitute my Bible reading for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you're gonna get unfiltered with this thing. You know what I mean? You're not getting anybody's opinion when you read it straight out of the book yourself. And what The Chosen is that's one director's take on the story, but he could be wrong, about a few things. So read your own Bible. So that's that. I'm no diss on The Chosen, but I've watched the first season and a couple random episodes here and there. I just I can't. It doesn't keep my attention for some reason, even though it's well done. So I don't know what that's about. Some people love it, love it, love it, and won't miss a single episode. So God bless them, man. It's just not my cup of tea, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I haven't personally watched it myself. I have seen it all over a lot recently. And
Yeah,
then
this
it was at Walmart. I saw like all three seasons or whatever.
mega hit. It's a mega hit. Like the people who love it really love it. You know, so good, good. I'm for Christian entertainment that's done very well. And the same thing with that Sound of Freedom movie. That whole thing about human trafficking. I think it's really done very well. But someone who's been like I've been a victim of child sexual abuse myself, and I grew up in Detroit. A lot of crime, watch people get stabbed. I've had guns pointed in my face. So anything that triggers my trauma response, I avoid those things. Like even horror movies or slasher movies, like those don't entertain me, man. Those just stress me out. I don't watch them because it just triggers negative feelings inside of me, and I don't need to be. The world is triggering enough. You know what I mean? I don't have to sit down and submit myself all to all that stuff. Um, so I know some people really, they're really moved by movies like the Sound of Freedom because maybe they've never been exposed to sexual abuse or they've never been a victim of it. They can't imagine these things. But for me, I'm glad the content exists, but it's not content that I want to consume personally. So I know that's weird to talk about, but that's how I consume it. I
No,
need things that'll encourage me, that'll lift me up, that'll give me peace, that help me sleep at night.
yeah, it's totally understandable. There's a movie that people always want us to watch because we do a lot of movie reviews and deep dives and stuff, and it's called Come and See, I think, but it's about war, and it's really, really dark and really graphic, and I'm like, I don't need to watch that,
Yeah.
I'll watch something fun, so every once in a while I kind of get something, but not like that.
I did watch All's Quiet on the Western Front, which
Okay.
I had to read that one in high school, which basically tells the story of a German soldier and the trauma of war. And there's a poetic side to that, of course. So I don't avoid difficult movies in all cases. If I have an intellectual purpose for watching it, I'll watch. But if I think that something may trigger a trauma response in myself, I don't watch it. I don't know.
It's understandable, yeah. What about, it's a classic and then it was remade, Ben-Hur obviously has some Jesus stuff in there. How do
Yeah,
you think that one was done?
same thing. I think the production values are really high. Hollywood dropped a lot of money into that movie because they knew there'd be a lot of what the 10 Commandments did so well. So they thought, well, if the 10 Commandments did well, let's pour some more money into a Bible movie, but we'll give ourselves a little more leeway with the script. We'll just, write this script about this guy who's obscure and we can make up a story. I think some of it's also based on Catholic oral tradition, some of like the Catholic church history, but not based on Bible history. So, I look all that with sort of a skeptical eye. I'm like, yeah, maybe that's how it went down. Probably not.
Right. Well, yeah, that brings up our last guest that we talked to about Jesus. We asked about the Last Temptation of Christ.
Yeah.
The Scorsese, I think, did that one.
And
And
Willem Dafoe was Christ. Yeah.
yeah, and he's like, I don't think Jesus was questioning as much when he got to that stage.
No. Yeah. If he had been that unsure of it, he wouldn't have gone to the cross. Yeah. When people take liberties with the biblical account, that's where I just go, well, you're free to do that as an artist, but I'm also free not to, pay to watch your movie or buy your DVD or whatever, and it's a take, but it's probably a hot take. You know what I mean?
Maybe not even a good hot take either.
Right, exactly.
No, it's very similar because, like I said, we do a lot of Billy the Kid stuff,
Right.
and so Epix right now has the Billy the Kid series,
All
and
right.
it takes a lot of liberties, like a ton. And I'm
Right.
just like, I don't want to watch it. Like, I'm sure people might get interested. I'm sure it has good production value, but it just does not interest me at all.
Well, the part of the Billy the Kid story that really intrigues me, and I don't know if this is true, and maybe you'll know from the research you've done, but supposedly Billy the Kid was in Brooklyn or somewhere in New York. He was left by a parent, I don't know if his mom or dad, at a train platform and given a Bible, and he stayed there for a week waiting for his parent to return. And he read the entire Bible, and somehow he caught a train out west.
Hmm.
And that some of that trauma of being orphaned by a parent and then having nothing but a Bible to read for all those days did something to him. And I think, well, that makes sense. That probably makes sense. I don't know if have you heard that part of the story before?
I have not. No.
Yeah, so that was part of how he was orphaned as a kid. That he was basically just a street urchin, just a rough and tumble, ragamuffin on the streets of New York, and he ended up in New Mexico because he got a free ticket out west, and then became a cowhand, and because he didn't have any family, he didn't have any real mentors in his life. That's where that doc guy or whoever the guy who was taken in,
Tunstall.
Tunstall was taking in all those orphans. We'd have a dude ranch, right, where all these kids that weren't quite adults yet were learning learning the trade of the equestrian arts, and how to do cattle raising. It was free labor basically for him, and those kids got an education and they got a place to stay. So the pre-story of how he became an orphan is the story about the Bible on the train platform. And I go, that probably makes sense. It also makes sense why he probably had such a chip on his shoulder, because the world did him dirty,
Oh, for sure. Lincoln County was so corrupt.
And then just seeing seeing the Bible as a tool, as a tool of distraction, or the club to beat you with, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people think the Bible is a cruel book, because it's used as a rule book to keep you in line. But to me, that isn't what the Bible is. For me, the Bible is a love letter from God to us. And the rules are there to protect me, not to kill my fun, or to take away my joy. It's there to protect me and to give me a peaceful and joy-filled life. So, yeah, I think a lot of people just they see it all wrong, because they see it through the eyes of religion rather than through true spirituality.
Right. No, I remember in one of the times we were there, you played a video where the guy was talking about he didn't like religion, but he loved Jesus.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I would still say that's true for me personally. Religion, denominationalism, I'll say, when people have to use church government, or they have to use their way of doing things, we're the only right way. Wait a second, but aren't there other churches? Aren't there other ways? Aren't there other, yeah, we got one book, but you're telling me that your take on this one book is the only right take? There's a lot of ways to read that book. And so power and control, people use religion for power and control, and manipulation. There's a great Pentecostal Bible teacher that I used to read his books a lot. His name was Derek Prince. And he talked about how the enemy uses a 3-pronged strategy of intimidation, manipulation, and domination. So you'll see it with a husband and a wife. A wife will manipulate her husband's feelings, by crying or whatever, to manipulate him to do what she wants him to do. The husband will get his wife to do what he wants her to do by intimidating her, or being tough, or intimidating the kids, or it's my way or the highway, or blah, 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 right? But they all end up in the same place, that what they want to do is dominate, right? Manipulation, intimidation always leads to domination. If you get your way and you continue to get your way, then you get to dominate everybody, control people, places, and things, and get your way. But in the end, I don't think anybody ever gets away with anything. I think if you got what you got through manipulation, you're going to pay a price for it one day. If you got it through intimidation, people resent you for it. They won't love you back. One day they'll rebel and go, I'm not taking this anymore. Right? So it's a loser's game. And again, I think that comes from the kingdom of darkness. That doesn't come from the kingdom of light. That's not loving, right? That's not kind. And God is love. He's loving. And so if religion has treated you with intimidation or manipulation or domination, I don't think that's the Spirit. I don't think that's the Holy Spirit. I think that's religion trying to impose some power, some kind of system on you, because God doesn't do that. God gives us a free will. We can choose him or not choose him, but he wants us to choose him. He holds out his hand to us. He says, come to me. Come on, come. I'm here, right? All you got to do is reach back. And that goes outside of church politics and denominations and all that.
Well, yeah, and you're talking about choosing. It's always been so fascinating to me how Rome and how they felt about Jesus. But then so many years later, Constantine and everyone is so interested in finding the artifacts and finding all this stuff from his time. And so it's it came back, and they it was just such a fascinating topic to me.
Yeah. the relics and all that,
Mhm.
it's, of course, so much of that was just chicanery. It was a con job. This is the toe of St. James. Like, really? How do we know? How can we verify that? What will it do? It will heal your boils. Like, okay, all right. Okay, get out of here with that. It's like, it's snake oil,
Right.
it's vitamins. What is it going to do? What's it going to do exactly? Nothing. It's not going to do anything.
Well, yeah, there's I watched Josh Gates's Expedition Unknown. I don't know if you watched that.
Yeah, I've seen some of that.
Yeah, and he's done quite a few on like different like religious like artifacts and stuff. Obviously, the Holy Grail and all
Right.
that. And it's so
Out
in
of
the
Turin.
whole
That's an interesting one, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your take on the shroud?
Could be. It could be. That one with the analysis they've done with it down the years, that it is seems to be some kind of photostatic radiated garment that can't be explained. And who knows, man? I mean, it's a one of a kind item for sure. Could be the blood on it in the exact wound locations where Jesus had his wounds. The uncanny likeness of what we imagine Christ to look like. The fact that people swear up and down that they've got the receipts to show where it came from. Could be. I don't know, man. Again, that one is convincing. There's some very interesting things about it. And could it be that God preserved that for some reason? Like, is there, how many people have come to faith just because they saw the shroud? Maybe a few, you know? So sometimes God allows those things for people because they need evidence. Some people, man, they just need something tangible they can hold in their hand and go, oh, yeah, now I have it because I need it. But in the end, I don't think we need evidence. I think we need a relationship. I think what people really need is a sense of love, that they're loved by God, that they know God, they sense his presence and he loves them back, right? Or they need somehow reconciled with a wound they have, and that if they can feel heard and listened to, their wound can get healed and they can have their peace with God. Because that supersedes the intellect. That goes beyond the understanding. That's deeply spiritual, you know. And in the end, you're not convinced into being a Christian. You're converted to being a Christian. It's not an intellectual thing. It's a spiritual thing. Yeah, I think there's some of those are totally bogus, I think, and then some of them you're like, well, could be, man. I don't know.
Right. We talked to a guy and he was saying how the shroud was like almost like a photograph or X-ray from when like Jesus, when wherever, that next realm,
Yeah,
but he transformed
like the
and it
radiation,
was like,
right?
yeah, yeah. And I was like, that is a very interesting take. Like I've never thought of it
Be.
that way.
Really, very well could be. I've been reading. I'll show you this. You'll get a kick out of this. Uh, I've been reading um, the Apocrypha, which is I have the complete Dead Sea Scrolls. So
Okay.
this is all the extra scrolls from the Qumran site um, in Israel, where they found the original scrolls of Daniel, Isaiah, the Torah, um, all the old, the major and minor prophets, um, a bunch of the Talmud, and then a bunch of books that aren't in the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Judith, the uh, the the um, the account of Solomon. Like, there's a lot of books that didn't make the Bible. You go, huh? I wonder what that's about. So I've been reading through that, going, yeah, wow, interesting. If nothing else, it's Israeli history. It's Jewish history. The story of Judith is really a fascinating story. According to that story, Nebuchadnezzar tried to send a first army to conquer Jerusalem and couldn't do it. And this wealthy Jewish widow took her servant out to this camp where the Babylonian army was, and through a crazy set of circumstances, she was able to behead, she took the head off this general in the middle of the night, took his head back to Jerusalem, showed it to the army, and it sent the Babylonians into such confusion that they left. And they had a reprieve from the siege of Jerusalem, because this crazy lady named Judith went out there and made friends with the enemy and then cut the guy's head off. Like, that probably didn't make the Bible, because the Catholics and the priests didn't like the fact that she used her womanly wiles to basically seduce this guy and then kill him. But it's a great Jewish story.
Right. Yeah,
You know?
we were talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls and Book of Enoch with Reverend Michael J.S. Carter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so those are fascinating because it's like, why didn't they make the Bible?
Yeah.
Who was like choosing, or maybe they were in the Bible and someone took them out. I don't know.
Well, I think the big question for Enoch is authorship, right? Because the traditional belief was that Moses invented the Hebrew characters, that Hebrew is an oral language until the Torah, that everything that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were saying, there wasn't a written script for. Everything was just oral. And that Moses, because of his Egyptian training and could read and write, he invented the character letters for Hebrew. But more mystical kind of people, Kabbalists and others, believe that Hebrew was the language of creation. That when God said, "Let there be light," he said it in Hebrew. When he was speaking to Adam and Eve, the original human language was Hebrew. Again, I don't have any evidence for that. I don't have anything in the Bible that says that. It could be. But if Enoch wrote that account, it would have had to been some kind of time travel, because Enoch existed before Noah, before the flood, right? And how would this book survive the flood? Noah would have had to take the book on the ark, right? It would have had to survive the Tower of Babel and Nimrod. And then it could be that if it did exist, that would be how Abraham had a greater understanding of God, because of what Enoch wrote about the celestial realms. Because the book of Enoch, man, it's a crazy book. Like, it describes a lot of stuff. And like, uses a lot of metaphor, and then it's also apocalyptic. So it's describing the end times, like how the world is going to end. And you go, if this is the first Enoch, like the Enoch from Genesis, like from the which it claims to be, we ought to sit up and take note and at least pay attention. I think Enoch 1 would be the one to look at. The other ones, Enoch 2 and 3, I think are misnamed, because I think Enoch 3 was really a Gnostic invention by what we would call today, what we'd call New Agers, just crazy mystics. People who just have, I'm channeling a spirit, and they just say the wildest things. And you're like, okay, all right, all right, calm down. It's one of those kind of, they're like, I see in your future, you're going to Walmart. Like, oh no, yeah, we're all going to Walmart. What are you talking about?
Yeah, someone that Harry Houdini would not approve of. We'll
Right,
say.
exactly. Like, so I think psychics and mediums,
Mhm.
definitely need to be taken with a heaping, tablespoon of salt. But
Yeah, a mound of salt, mountain full of salt.
yeah. But there are other things that you go, yeah, some, things like the Dead Sea Scrolls, for whatever reason, they weren't discovered until the 70s, right? And suddenly they came to light. So God allowed them to be discovered, right? And what's so crazy is you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and they prove the Bible. They show that they've been faithfully interpreted down through the years and have not been changed. Book of Daniel reads exactly the same way in the Dead Sea Scrolls as it does in our modern Bible. Book of Isaiah reads the exact same in the Dead Sea Scrolls as it does in our modern Bible. Like, it hasn't changed. It's the eternal word of God. It's been a faithful translation. And you go, so what about these other books? And And so I think it's the part of the mystery we're supposed to figure out. That God wants us to, to sort these things, test the spirits, like the Apostle Paul said, and see if they be of the Lord. And some of them are, and some of them aren't. But yeah, I think Enoch 1 is a candidate for something powerful. Enoch 3, I don't believe in. I think that's just ridiculous. I think there's some crazy ridiculousness to that. I think that's just somebody did mushrooms in the
in the
Kabbalah,
desert.
the Kabbalah community. Yeah. A lot of Gnostic gospels that I think are just made up. Like Constantine's mother. You mentioned Constantine.
Mhm.
His mother was one of those mystics that just, like a New Ager. Crystals, whatever. I sense that it was here. Okay. You know what I mean? You have no evidence. You have no
Right.
evidence.
Well,
So
that's like I know in one of I mentioned Josh Gates earlier, but they did an episode, and somehow the burning bush got brought up,
all
and
right.
there's a shrine that claims to have the burning bush,
Interesting.
and I was like, how can you prove that? Like,
Somewhere in Canaan, right?
yeah,
Probably in northern Israel, probably like Hebron somewhere.
it
Yeah.
might have been in the same episode he was looking for more of the Dead Sea Scrolls. If
Oh,
you
okay.
haven't seen that one, I'd recommend it.
Yeah,
I find those fascinating.
they're still searching those caves. The belief, because the cave is so high on the mountain, the belief was the water line of the Dead Sea was much higher then.
Mhm.
So the beach was like 5 miles to the west of where it is now. So they're still searching a bunch of those caves that are west of the Dead Sea, but still south and east of Jerusalem. And they might find more. I mean, they could find more. And it would probably just prove more of the Bible true. And then there might be other books that we've never heard of before that will
Right.
come out. And you're like, whoa, what is this? It is interesting that the Ethiopian church does have Enoch 1 as a book in their canon of scriptures. And I think some Eastern Orthodox churches do have it in their scripture collection too, but they don't have Enoch 3. And so it's Enoch 1. And I think the Catholic Bible either does or used to have Enoch 1. Of course, has the Maccabees and a few other things that the Protestant Bible doesn't have in canon. But yeah, it is fascinating for sure.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that kind of stuff, and just learning new stuff is always intriguing.
Right?
Yeah. I'd love to go some of those sites someday, just like be there and like see like Solomon's temple wall and stuff like that.
You can volunteer. So if you get some vacation time, you can volunteer for archaeological digs. So
Okay.
they're still doing archaeological digs at the Temple Mount. So you can volunteer 2 or 3 weeks of your time. And I think they do it in Galilee too, near Capernaum. You can volunteer to be a part of archaeological digs, and they'll give you housing and food, and then you just help dig up dirt and sift out relics all day for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. You can volunteer your time to do that. So right now I wouldn't recommend it just because the war is still hot, real hot right now. But another 6 months or so, I think a lot of the stuff is going to calm down and you can go back to Israel again. But that would be a worthy thing to do while you're young, go do that. And you would be enriched by it for sure. You get a lot out of that. Your faith would be encouraged. Like, oh, this is a real place. It really happened. Some of these things really happened.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that would be so cool. Well, one last question before we end off.
Sure.
How do you think Jordan Love is doing so far?
That's a hot topic for debate in our house. My son Max does not like Jordan Love at all. He's like, he stinks. Get him off the field. And my wife is diehard Packer fan her whole life. So Packers can do no wrong. Whatever the Packers do is right. It's kind of like Jesus. Like, oh, if Jesus says so, right. Like, no. This is football. Right? So I watch the Packers, but I try to watch them with a little more detachment. I was a youth pastor in Green Bay. I lived in Wisconsin for a little bit. I'm from Detroit. So I'm more of a Michigan fan. Like I'm really looking forward to the Wolverines Alabama game on January 1st. But I do watch the Packers with interest. But yeah, Jordan Love, he's young. I think that's what's really going on. He shows moments of brilliance, and then he just whiffs it sometimes. Like, where are you looking? Like, are you throwing without looking? What are you what are you doing? Right. So I think he makes a lot of rookie quarterback mistakes. In some ways reminds me of what Favre was like when he was first starting out. You're like, wow, that was great. And then you're like, what happened there? Miss Aaron Rodgers for sure, but Rodgers isn't playing for anybody right now. So the whole league is different. The whole league is different. We went to the Broncos Packer game this season when they played at Mile High after church that Sunday. And of course the Broncos won, but yeah, this is a rebuilding year for the old Packers. They are not a Super Bowl team. They're really not. They're in the wild. They could make the wild card, can make the playoffs. I guess they could be underestimated, but they're the youngest team in the league right now by stats. So you look at their whole lineup, and by stats, they're the youngest team in the league. So of course they're going to make a ton of mistakes. So I wouldn't. I'm setting my wife would be crazy if she heard me saying this stuff because she's, you can't say that about the Packers. But I'm like, look, let's be real. Let's just be real. They're young. They're not gonna win the Super Bowl. Not this year. Not this year. So and that and to me, and when the college thing is so crazy because Michigan has just dominated, totally undefeated. And some of the teams they've played, it's like, are you playing a community college? Like these, why are you guys even in the same conference? Like, what is going on, right? It's only when they kind of come up against Ohio State or, I was worried about that, Georgia making it, but it looks like Georgia's wasn't as good as Alabama this year. So when they face the top of the SEC, when they face the big dogs, then that's when you start to see what the team's made of. But it's almost like there's too many teams in the NCAA. I think it's gotten diluted, and then you have that weird structure where the higher ups decide who the final four are.
Right.
It was sort of weird. Was it Florida that got kind of
Florida
screwed?
State. Yeah.
Florida State got screwed out of a seed, just
Undefeated. Yeah.
because of how things went down. And you're like, yeah, that part of the league needs to somehow be more fair. I think. I don't know, but I love college football too. I watch more college football because it's on a Saturday. I'm pretty busy on most Sundays, so a lot of times by the time pro football is happening on Sunday, I'm like halfway into a nap.
No, I hear you there. I went to my school's Louisville, and yeah, when Lamar Jackson was there, they were like 12-0 or something, and then they lost one game. And that was it. The season's over. One game.
Isn't that crazy?
And yeah, we go up to Wyoming a lot, and obviously, and film up in the college and stuff. But yeah, they'll do really good, and it's like, yeah, they'll probably not even get close to a bowl game. They did this year, but yeah, the college rankings are always weird. It's always like the four same teams.
Yeah, we were hoping good things for Dion, right? When Dion came to Boulder, it was like he came on so strong in the beginning of the season, and then the Buffaloes just totally whiffed it. Like, man, oh man, well, you guys,
right?
Yeah, it was too bad. CU looked good in the very beginning,
Yeah, it sounds like Dion will be back next year, at least for now. So
probably under contract.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I'm sure they'll get better. I mean, that team won, so when they started, what was it, 4-1, I think? That was the Rocks up there and like all these big stars. I was like, this is insane.
Like it's gonna be amazing, and then it didn't.
Yeah.
That's football. That's why we watch. We don't know what's gonna happen, right?
Right. Especially this year. Any given Sunday, we do a sports podcast, and I just stopped like picking who I thought was gonna win. I'm like, I'm gonna tank it this week, and I actually did good. I picked all the people I thought was gonna lose.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on tonight. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We'll definitely have to have you back on again. Maybe because we do deep dives. Maybe we'll talk about like Passion of the Christ or something.
Yeah, shoot me your email and I'll send you a link. I'll send you the file for the song and the
Okay.
album art.
Okay. And then before we end off, do you want to just tell the viewers and listeners where they can find you, your music, and obviously the church?
For sure. Yep. I'm on all digital musical platforms under Wayne Hanson. It's Hanson. And the bands that I've been in is W and Samaritan. And then if you want to come check out the church in Sedalia, you go to mysummitchurch.com, or if you're on Facebook, go Summit Church of Douglas County, and we stream our services. And then, of course, watch the Jesus Taxi show on YouTube. That's a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
amazing stuff.
Well, thank you again for joining us. And this was a very fun episode, especially for our 30th. This was special. So
Right on.
thank you for joining us.
Special for me too.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Keegan.
Once again, we want to say thank you to Pastor Wayne for joining us on this awesome 30th episode of Culz Interviews. Make sure to go help support him and check out his new song. Link in the description below, as well as links to his books, as well as a link to Summit Church in Sedalia. But until next time, for more Culz Interviews, click that link to your left. For more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know if you've listened to Pastor Wayne's song. What did you think of it?